Giving it just a second here. Alrighty, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys. Special little weather chat here. We're going to talk mainly about the tropics today. We've got two active tropical systems out in the Atlantic. One of them is Franklin, who I'm sure you guys have been hearing me talk quite a bit about. And the other one is Tropical Storm Idalia, which last evening when we were taking a look at it was just a tropical depression. Now it is a tropical storm, and thus it has gotten its name. So with that in mind, look at that. We're going to wait for a few people here to kind of jump on, as I know we got some other people who are going to be tuning in as we go into this. And before we kind of look at Adalia, that's probably the one we're going to spend a good amount of time on here. I do want to show you really quickly something kind of cool. We have Adalia that is out in the just off Cancun coast. There is a buoy out there with a camera. Take a look. That is what 38-mile-an-hour winds have gusts up to about 49 miles an hour looks like for one of those poor little buoys that's just kind of hanging out there. Now, those buoys are quite fun, and they often sometimes do bring some pretty good pictures there. So we'll go ahead and give that a little break here, give the bandwidth just a little bit of a quick break there, and we're going to come back to Adalia here in just a few moments. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and flip over the screen here really quickly. And again, so you all can see me here for a quick moment. Welcome to tonight's weather chat with Timmy. As mentioned, mainly going to be focusing on the tropics, but there are a couple of thunderstorms going on across the deep south that maybe we'll take a little bit of a look at here. But all things considered, we'll see how long this one goes. I'm not expecting it to be a very long weather chat, but we'll see what happens. All right. Let's go ahead here, and we're going to flip over to our graphics. We're going to start with Hurricane Franklin that is out in the waters. Now, earlier on today, it looked like it was having a little bit of a problem. It looked like it was probably going through an eye wall replacement. Might have also ran into a little bit of wind shear there, but it is starting to look better organized now. As a matter of fact, its eye has kind of reappeared on the satellite imagery. And what the National Hurricane Center is expecting with Franklin over the next probably 24 hours, that it will continue a steady or possibly maybe even undergo a little bit of a rapid intensification. Expected peak winds right now from this hurricane. It's got 100-mile-an-hour winds right now. It is expected that it could get up to about 130 miles an hour. That would put it in the Category 3 status. Now, you hear me talking about categories, so let's go ahead and we'll kind of go over this a little quickly. Whoop, that's the wrong graphic. This right here, there we go, right there, that I'm pointing at is the Saffir-Simpson scale. That is what we use in the Atlantic and East and Central Pacific to categorize hurricanes. So basically, the lowest is a tropical depression, and those typically don't get named. They just get numbers. In the case of Adalia yesterday, it was tropical depression number 10. Well, now it is Tropical Storm Idalia. Winds got up to 39 miles an hour at least. That's where it got its tropical storm classification. Now, again, we only name them if they reach at least tropical storm intensity. If it does fall below tropical storm intensity, it'll still retain its name, even if it's a tropical depression, but it's got to get to at least tropical storm first in order to get its name. All right, after that, we got categories of hurricanes. So anything above 74-mile-an-hour winds is automatically a hurricane. Again, you got category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Category 5 is the strongest. There is no upper wind bound for it. As long as it has winds at least or greater than 157 miles an hour, it is a Category 5, and those are generally the big ones. And Category 5s having winds even more than the 157. Believe me, I've seen quite a few in my days that are well over that value. It's interesting, actually, they changed it a couple of years ago. It used to be 155 miles an hour, but now it's 157 miles an hour. So that was a little change they did a few years ago. So when we talk about categories of hurricanes, that's what we're referring to. Again, it's based solely on wind speed. So let's go ahead and we'll go back to Franklin here. Now that we've gotten past that little sidebar. And again, at the bottom there, you can see the satellite imagery. This is an infrared satellite imagery. This is not radar. This is infrared satellite imagery. So it's actually measuring the temperatures of the clouds there. And again, we can see that eye kind of reappearing. Right now, 100-mile-an-hour sustained winds is what is believed to have. That puts it in the category two category, puts it in the category two category. Yeah, that sounds, I think that's grammatically correct. Basically, it's expected right now, the Hurricane Center is expecting about 130-mile-an-hour winds is what it could reach maybe in the next day or so. It's rounding the base of an upper level ridge. That's kind of what's giving it that little weird, C curvature there in its expected track before eventually an upper level trough across the eastern U.S. will grab onto it and help accelerate it way off to the north and to the east. Right now, it might be a little hard there to see, just based on the bandwidth available, but it does look like the center will be passing just off to the north of Bermuda. It'll still get kind of close, though. So Bermuda might see at least some effects from this, but we'll keep an eye on that. But overall, looking like this one's mainly going to be staying out in the open waters. So pretty interesting. That's Franklin. Now, for the one that I'm sure you all have been hearing about, it's going to be this week's Storm of the Century. You wait for it, folks. It'll be, I've never seen anything like it before. You wait. All right. So this is going to be Tropical Storm Idalia, which, again, yesterday at this time was a tropical depression. It's now a tropical storm. This map is slightly outdated. The latest advisory came out about 30 seconds before we started this. It now has winds up to 45 miles an hour. Again, still a tropical storm. But we're going to take a look at its track a little bit more in depth. There are some hurricane watches that are in effect along parts of the Florida coast. It's looking like that's where it's going to be making a landfall. Now, there are some things to go through here with Idalia. So at the bottom, you can see the satellite imagery there. Still trying to get itself organized. It does look like the convection is now happening around a center, which is needed in order for the pressure to decrease and the storm to intensify. Let's go ahead and talk a couple things about Idalia here. Idalia right now is, again, as mentioned, a weak tropical storm. It's slowly becoming better organized. Its movement right now is kind of slow and erratic. To borrow a term from the Hurricane Center, kind of an erratic, slow motion there, just kind of hobbling around. It's probably going to do that over about the next 12 hours or so until it starts getting a little bit better organized. Now, there's going to be a mid-level ridge that's going to be kind of developing out across Florida later on, and that's going to kind of give Idalia a little bit of that northward motion. Now, we talk about upper level ridges. Those are important because they kind of can block a hurricane. Hurricanes are big areas of low pressure, all right? Low pressures cannot move a high pressure. So when you got a high pressure ridge in the way, the hurricane just cannot move that ridge. It has to wait for the ridge itself to move. And that's true of all low pressures that we see across the mid latitudes and all low pressures cannot move a high pressure. All right. So motion later on, as we go into the middle part of the work week, we're going to watch as kind of this mid-level trough begins to move into the eastern part of the U.S. A trough is an area of lower pressure, so that's going to kind of help to turn Idalia to the north and to the east, eventually giving it its landfall and maybe helping to accelerate it. You can see the spacing between those icons gets a little bit more. Again, its forward speed probably will increase. There are still some uncertainties right now with Idalia. And one of them is kind of a little bit of uncertainty with some wind shear that may be around in the Gulf of Mexico when it does reach there. Wind shear, it's interesting, and we talk about severe storms, we talk about wind shear kind of almost being a necessity. But if you're a hurricane, you don't want wind shear. It's kind of one of those weird things in weather. And again, there's a lot of reasons for that. Tropical systems kind of do their own little thing and just kind of work with the environment around them. But if there's too much wind shear, that will actually destroy the hurricane. So there is the possibility there could be a little bit of wind shear in the Gulf of Mexico when it does make its way in there, but it's still expected to intensify, possibly becoming a Category 2 hurricane before making landfall maybe sometime late on Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning. And we'll probably be doing a live around that time, whether we do it on YouTube or Facebook. Is still a little uncertain. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. But yes, we will be talking about it when that does happen, and maybe we'll get some video from that system. And actually, I know someone who works down in Tampa area, which again, right now is looking like it's going to be to the north. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind here for those of you who might not be familiar with the way hurricane forecasting works here, but you see that cone there, that shape. That does not mean hurricane conditions. That's generally where the center is expected to be of the hurricane. Now, again, Hurricanes kind of operate under a slightly different set of rules, slightly different set of rules. And again, that's just kind of more of an environment thing rather than a overall physics thing. But basically, the cone is where the center could be, but the conditions at least will extend sometimes outside of that cone. So it's very important to kind of keep in mind when you look at that map. That's just kind of where the center is expected. Now, generally, when we talk about hurricanes with 100-mile-an-hour winds, the whole thing does not have 100-mile-an-hour winds. All right, that's just located in a small part known as the eye wall. And when this gets closer to land and we're able to pick up radar on it, I'll show you guys all what the eye wall is and where you can find it in a hurricane. But again, it generally surrounds the actual eye. And that's where you see the strongest winds of a hurricane, not the whole thing. The 100-mile-an-hour winds that it's expected to maybe have when it gets close to landfall are not going to be spread out across the entire system. And again, I don't like it when they do that on the news, when they talk about, look at this hurricane, it's 500 miles wide. Yes, the clouds, yeah, it is 500 miles wide on a satellite imagery, but that is not the whole thing. Well, that is, you get the idea. So, kind of interesting there. And like I said, we'll kind of keep an eye on that system as it gets a little bit closer. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and we're going to flip over a little bit and we'll take kind of a little bit of a look at this actual tropical system here. And again, this is Idalia that we're talking about, not Franklin. So here is, again, the National Hurricane Center's expected path with Idalia. So again, that's that red cone there. Doesn't mean that's exactly where, it does, the center, you see that little line right there in the middle. Again, that's just the center of the cone. The center could end up maybe a little bit over here or whatnot. It looks like there has been some forecasting over the past few model runs of shifting it just slightly over towards the east. So you get the idea, but generally we're expecting it to kind of follow this path. By the time we get towards, as mentioned, Tuesday evening here, it's going to be Hurricane Idalia. It's expected that about 2 a.m., and I believe that is Eastern time, 2 a.m. on Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. It'll be approaching the land. It'll be approaching land and north of the Tampa area over around, let's see what town that is. Get my Florida geography straight. There's Tampa. We know that much. Hermosa Springs, Cedar Key area. So kind of not the most populated part of Florida, but still enough cities there nonetheless. Again, Pensacola is all the way over here. There's Pensacola. There's Santa Rosa Beach, Panama City, and then Destin is somewhere. There's Destin right around there. So again, that's the Florida Panhandle. This is looking more likely that it's going to kind of take a track to the northern part of Florida, not exactly the Panhandle. So again, that's the track. There's the cone of uncertainty. And again, we're taking a look right here as we go into Tuesday night. Early Wednesday morning, at least for right now, the National Hurricane Center is expecting 100-mile-an-hour sustained winds gusting up to about 120. That does put it in the Category 2 status. Now, again, this might sound weird, but we're still looking a few days out here. There's still some uncertainties, and sometimes these systems can undergo rapid intensification, and sometimes they can accidentally absorb some dry air and not intensify as much. So there is still some model disagreement over, where the exact intensity as it does approach the Florida coast, but much of the Gulf Coast area, low elevation, so it doesn't have to be a strong hurricane to kind of induce at least a little bit in the way of some surging and maybe a little bit of flooding there. But again, this is Florida, folks; they're used to it. Florida is taking so many hurricanes. It's honestly, they call it the Sunshine State. I don't know why they don't just call it the Hurricane State, because to a degree, that's kind of what it is. So we'll flip off the track here. And let's kind of take a look here. So we'll take out the track a little bit. And like I said, for those of you watching, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions for you. So we do have that hurricane watch that is in effect. We're going to go ahead here and see if we can't maybe get that. We don't want that. We wanted. No, we already did that there. Hold on a second. I'm trying to flip up the warnings here for you. There they are. I'm still learning the system here a little bit. Let's see if we can't kind of fill it in just a little bit. Again, we have hurricane watches that are in effect. No hurricane warnings right now. But we'll take a look at the hurricane watch that is in effect here. Just a second. Sorry, everybody. Got to get this system. Here we go. All right. So there we go. We got our hurricane watches, and this extends across much of the west central Florida coast. Goes all the way from Appalachia. I could never Folks, I could never pronounce that town's name right. And I'm sure I'm butchering it now. And of course, Tampa, St. Petersburg, all the way down to Sarasota and Venice. Now, again, this is a hurricane watch, not a hurricane warning. These are generally issued kind of at a set time frame, and the warnings are also issued at a set time frame, generally about 24 to 36 hours before the expected landfall. And most likely, folks, some of these will be upped to some of these will probably be upped to a hurricane warning. But again, we have to wait for it to get a little bit closer towards land here. So as far as wind surge or storm surge and everything, still a little uncertain, but that's the area that we're kind of looking at. Keep in mind, folks, if we were to flip back over the track here, what's pretty interesting about, well, not interesting, it's kind of normal, but as soon as the hurricane hits land, it's going to weaken. All right. Hurricanes do not like land. They are ocean storms. Once they hit land, they're going to weaken. Now they can survive going over land and end up back out in the ocean and re-intensify. That happens quite a bit. That happened with Katrina back in '05. It went over Florida, weakened, went back into the open Gulf, got re-intensified into Category 5, and then made landfall in Louisiana. In fact, Hurricane Andrew did kind of the same thing, although it was not as strong when it made its second landfall. Hurricane Ivan did a weird thing in 2004 where it did this crazy loop. It went all the way, made landfall in Florida, went through the kind of the eastern part of the deep south, went back into the open waters, and then redeveloped into a tropical system, and then made a second landfall in Florida. That was a boy. That system just kept on going. So let's go ahead here, and we're going to flip back over the track here really quickly. We'll take another look at Adelia here, because you can see it'll make its landfall, but then it's going to weaken again pretty quickly, as tropical systems do. It'll end up back out in the open waters, probably somewhere off the Savannah coast, and we'll probably maintain tropical storm intensity. Will then probably hook its way a little bit towards these open waters more so, and who knows, might try to make another pass close towards Bermuda. So Bermuda has two systems to watch for, and again, the other one being Hurricane Franklin. I keep calling it Tropical Storm Franklin, folks, because the past few days we've been talking about it was, a little stunted tropical storm that was just not having a good time. But now it seems to be having a little bit of a better time. Now, Tropical Storm Franklin is probably going to become a bit stronger. So let's talk about the wind field here for a quick second. I mentioned, the hurricane force winds typically do not extend that far out from the center. So this is the wind field of Hurricane Franklin right now. And again, there's the center. And the tropical storm force winds are this right here. This is the boundary here, 39 to 56 mile an hour winds. So kind of weak to moderate tropical storm force winds. 74 miles an hour would put it at hurricane status. And here we got the strong tropical storm force winds. That's that greener color. And then right in the middle is the hurricane force wind. So you can see, folks, we're not talking about the whole thing. This thing's got 100 mile an hour winds, but those hurricane force winds are just in that little orange circle that the track is partially obscuring. So keep in mind, that's how pretty much all tropical systems work. So you can kind of zoom out a little bit. Now let's go ahead and assume. Now, folks, this is going to be somewhat of an unscientific forecast thing here, all right? So we're just going to use this as an example. This is not how it's going to shape out, but right now, Franklin's got 100 mile an hour winds. The Hurricane Center is expecting that Franklin will have that Adelia will have 100 mile an hour winds or so when it makes landfall. So let's just assume. Again, we're assuming here, folks. I want to make that very, 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 very clear. Very clear. We're just going to do a quick little assumption solely for educational purposes. Again, we're not saying that this is how this is going to shape out for Adelia, but this will kind of give you a little bit of an idea. So, tropical storm or Hurricane Franklin right now, Category 2 hurricane, 100 mile an hour winds. That's what Adelia is expected to have when it makes its way over this part of Florida. So again, here's Franklin, here's Adelia. Kind of with your eyes, kind of drag this wind cone, more or less, these circles over here to where Adelia might be, and that gives you an idea kind of the wind speed. So not all of Florida is going to be getting 100 mile an hour winds unless this thing explodes into a massive, massive, massive hurricane, which, to be quite honest, folks, would be pretty interesting. I can't lie about that. That would actually be kind of cool. If it just massive Category 5 hurricane size of Florida, good God. But anyways, yeah. So those are some of probably the wind. That's probably going to be somewhat what the wind field might look like a little bit Again, just doing a quick little eye assumption here. Obviously, there's going to be other factors, and it's probably going to end up looking a bit different. But again, right now we're not expecting that all these places in the purple color here are going to be seeing hurricane conditions. It's probably just going to end up being kind of a small area. And again, that's just going based off of what the Hurricane Center is expecting. Right now, 100-mile-an-hour winds gusting to 120 as it approaches land. Folks, things could change, and oftentimes they do with these tropical systems. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, Franklin, on the other hand, is going to continue to intensify, probably becoming a Category 4 hurricane. Again, as it makes its way to the southwest of Bermuda, 130-mile-an-hour winds. So again, right at the border there for what we would consider a Category 4 hurricane, barely at that criteria. So that's at least what's expected right now. But we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that too. But again, Franklin is going to be staying mainly out in the open waters, and you can kind of see it there. That's its track. Not really going to be coming anywhere near shore. So pretty cool there. Certainly this time of the year, tropics do start getting active. Hurricane season tends to be, well, the peak of hurricane season is actually in September, believe it or not. So that is kind of a little bit of a look right now at what is going on in the tropics. So right now, Idalia, just barely a tropical storm. There's its estimated wind field. The hurricane hunters have been flying in and out of this thing, and they'll continue to do so. As we mentioned, they're doing intermediate updates with this. So unlike Franklin, who's getting an update every 6 hours, Idalia is getting one every 3 hours, and that's kind of to be expected as it does approach land. Especially when it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, it's just a lot easier to send resource, to track it more or less, and obviously because it's coming to populated areas. So again, it's going to kind of slowly intensify a little bit as we go through the next few days, and then it'll eventually, will become a hurricane. And let's see here. They're expecting it to become a hurricane. What is this going to be here? 29th, so tomorrow's 28th, Tuesday. Yeah, so probably by early Tuesday morning, it'll be a hurricane with 75-mile-an-hour winds, and again, it'll kind of continue to intensify as it does so. Pretty neat. Now, for those of you who are just tuning in, we got lucky again, and we have a buoy that is right out near the center of Idalia right now. And this is the pictures it was sending back. That is what 38-mile-an-hour sustained winds, 49-mile-an-hour gusts looks like at this particular location. See, this buoy is just bouncing up and down. This is probably this was from the update was from 7:40 p.m. Eastern time. My guess is this is probably somewhat of an old picture. Again, they don't take them during night. If it was night, all you would see is darkness. There's no lights around, but you can certainly see that buoy is just taking quite the little wave beating there. Those waves look to probably, I honestly can't even estimate them because I don't know how high up we're looking, but they're certainly more than about a foot. I'll tell you that much right now. Normally, these buoys actually do have a wave indicator on them, but in this case, it does not appear that this one does. Now, with that in mind, it might actually just not popping up on here because, yeah, this is a 4.2 buoy, so it should have wave measurements on it. Regardless, you get the idea. 45-mile-an-hour winds gusting up to about 38-mile-an-hour winds. So this is actually, this is just below tropical storm force sustained winds. So overall, you get the idea. Now, this system is still intensifying there. That's just a great picture. You can see the waves kind of looks like, if you ever seen the movie The Perfect Storm, one of my favorite movies, kind of looks like that a little bit there with the waves. Now, mind you, Idalia is moving away from this, so it's not going to be seeing this for too much longer. But as it does get closer, it does look like we have a few other buoys that are going to be in the path. This one, if we go with the Hurricane Center's forecast, 42, I write that one down, 42099. That one could have some very good video when it does pass by. 42099. All right, so we know to keep an eye on that one. And then let's see who else. So what other buoys we got out here? This could be a good one too. Buoy 42036. And yes, folks, this is what I do in my spare time. Believe me, I will sit and I will watch these buoys here. Right now with that one, it's calm winds. See partly cloudy skies there. All is quiet on the ocean front, at least right there. But this one is expected to be on the western edge of Adelia. And typically, when we talk about tropical systems, typically the strongest winds are on the eastern side. And there is actually a reason for that, but I will spare you all the details. So that is a look right now at the tropics. Pretty interesting. Alrighty, so now you've all been brought up to date on what is going on right now in the tropics. Franklin and Adelia. All right, we also got a tropical storm out in the Pacific Ocean. His name is Irwin. Irwin is probably not going to be doing much, but hey, why not? While we're on the topic, let's go ahead and take a look over at Irwin, who is way out in the middle of nowhere, down here. Look at it go. And the Hurricane Center is expecting that this one is mainly just going to be a little tropical storm. They're not expecting it to really intensify. It's not going to have the best time. There is actually another one. Let's see here if it's got the track up for this one. There is Saola way out in the, there it is. Yeah, we got this dude way out here. Now, the colors on this one are going to be kind of slightly misleading because this is done through a different forecasting agency. I believe this is under the Joint Typhoon Warning, I believe. And right now, 125-mile-an-hour winds and gusting to 155. I do know that with Saola, we were looking at that one earlier, the tropical update early this afternoon. We were taking a look at that one. Again, this is the Philippines here. It's going to be staying just to the north of the Philippines. It kind of underwent a weird track. So there might have been a little bit of upwelling that was weakening it. That's when the storm sits over a place long enough, the waves kind of overturn the water, and it brings that cooler water up to the surface sometimes. So that might have weakened it up a little bit because it did not look that impressive this afternoon on the satellite imagery. But they are expecting that it is going to become impressive yet again. 145-mile-an-hour winds is about what they're expecting, I think, for the peak. So just shy of super typhoon, which out in the West Pacific, when it's 150 miles an hour or greater, it is a super typhoon. So just different name there. But and like I said, they use slightly different categories. So that is a look, folks, over at the tropics. So pretty interesting nonetheless. Now you've all been brought up to speed there. All right, so we got a couple of buoys that we'll keep an eye on. Naturally, we'll keep an eye on Adelia here as we go forward in the forecast. Again, could be a pretty interesting one, and because it's going to be going into a semi-populated area, we'll probably certainly be getting quite a bit in the way of observations. We'll get observations. We'll get other stuff. I lost that sentence mid-thought. You get what I'm saying. We'll keep an eye on it. So pretty interesting there, nonetheless. All right. Do we want to talk about other weather going on? What do you guys think? I don't know. There's a couple storms going on, but I don't think there's anything really severe at this time. Let me go ahead here. We'll just take a quick look over at the radar. Let me shut off all this tropical stuff there before it gets pretty cluttered. And it'll get cluttered. We had a lone severe thunderstorm warning down in Mississippi. That's since expired, and we got a little flash flood warning out around Charlotte. Let's just see what that radar looks like really quickly. I grabbed the radar here. Charlotte's one of those cities that's in kind of a little bit of a radar gap, but then again, so is most of the southern part of North Carolina. It's kind of annoying, actually. Radar gaps. We'll explain that some other time. Yeah, they got some storms down there. Let's take a quick little look here. We'll flip over the whole screen, and there you go. There's South Carolina and North Carolina. Quite a stormy evening over there, but right now doesn't appear to be anything strong or severe. These these kind of appear to be all running into each other in terms of outflow boundaries here. Probably a lot of that going on because that storm up around Chapel Hill looks like it's moving to the north, while the others are kind of moving down to the south. But when we get Adelia to come through, it'll certainly have some rain of its own. And sometimes those hurricanes produce some pretty decent trail outbreaks. A lot of wind shear going on, strong wind shear going on of a rotating massive storm. So could be pretty interesting to take a look at as we go forward. So that is tonight's weather chat. Not really sure if there's much else. It's a Sunday evening too. A lot of people gotta get ready for work in the morning, but yeah, that's kind of how that's looking to shape up. Certainly an interesting one nonetheless. So, um, what was I gonna say? I don't remember, but you get the idea. All right, so that is a look over at the tropics and everything else that is going on. I am meteorologist Timmy Albertson. I thank you all very much for taking the time to join me. And for those of you who might be new and are questioning if I'm actually a meteorologist or not, there's my meteorology degree back there. So I'll bring it over at some point. But yeah, so I am a meteorologist, Penn State grad, and been mainly working in broadcast over the years. So that's a little bit about me. Still somewhat working in broadcast and obviously hosting this little weather chat show. So kind of cool. And I hope you all enjoy these weather chats. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. Yeah, guess that's about it on that. Subscribe to that YouTube page. Do it. That way, yeah, the more subscriptions we have, the more it helps us out. So feel free to yeah, do that. Anyways, I look forward to seeing you all at the next weather chat. It'll be tomorrow evening. In the meantime, I'll probably maybe do another tropical update sometime during the day tomorrow. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. But yeah, all things considered, that is that. So I hope you all have a good rest of your evening. And as always, enjoy that weather. Take care, everyone.